Welcome into the Blue White Breakdown. I'm Max Ralph. Alongside me this week is Bob Flounders. It's not Johnny McGonigal this week. You'll notice if you're a frequent live podcast listener, Johnny's on some PTO right now. So Bob's going to do an excellent job of
Yeah,
filling in. I know he's just
probably.
absolutely stoked to be here.
I
As
am.
always.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we love the live show here. It's the Blue White Breakdown on Penn Live. We've got a big show for you today because we've got some news in the middle of February, Bob. We have a date for Blue White Weekend, which I'm not sure we really have a whole lot to discuss beyond that, but we do have a date.
Yeah, April 25th. It was about as bare bones of a social media announcement as it could possibly have been. I'm presuming it's going to be inside Beaver Stadium, but they couldn't even commit to that. I'd be shocked if they're playing in the parking lot. But it just circles back to me, Max, that when we had an availability with Matt Campbell and his assistants earlier this month, he brought up the importance of having something on Blue White Weekend and some semblance of a blue white game. He didn't want to commit to what it was going to be. He said he was going to talk to Pat Kraft about it, but he said he wanted to make sure the fans had a great experience. He also wanted to get, especially the new Penn State additions, inside that stadium in front of fans. He thought it was important. Let's hope the weather cooperates. April 25th is the final Saturday in April. I think that's probably tied in. I think it's probably also going to be a Saturday for the NFL draft as well. It should be a busy time, but I figured it was either going to be the 25th or the 18th, and I think the 25th makes sense.
Yeah, so like you said, there are literally no details, not even a start time, but we do know that there is going to be a blue-white weekend. I agree with what Matt Campbell said when he brought it up in his press conference that he wants his players to be out there and at least experience Beaver Stadium with fans in it. He doesn't want that the first time that happens to be against Marshall and when the season gets rolling. I think that's the right move, even if it's just some 7-on-7. What may have you. There's not going to be a lot of contact. I can almost guarantee it, but there'll be something, be a reason for fans to come out to Happy Valley, which is, I think, generally what everybody's looking for to keep the economy happy, keep the money flowing. That's what this is about always.
Tailgating, tailgating experience, the football experience. It's a new era. So I think that this blue white game has probably piqued the interest of the fans a little bit more than maybe the recent blue white games during the later stages of the James Franklin era. Only because it's a new shiny toy and people are invested and attracted to things that are new and shiny.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm willing to bet the attendance will be really great this year. Didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, not at all.
As we keep rolling here on the live version of the Blue White Breakdown on this Thursday afternoon, if you have questions, drop them in the chat. We'll address them. But there's some other news that we got to get to, Bob. Pretty big news. Penn State has its new wide receivers coach. Well, at least it's not official yet. It's expected, widely reported. We're awaiting the official announcement. But Kashif Moore, who was officially at Colorado State most recently, but didn't coach a game there because he was at UConn beforehand, followed Jim Mora when he switched from being the head coach at UConn to Colorado State. Kashif Moore, really interesting pickup for me. And before I let you roll with it, Bob, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Noah Pauley's background, the guy who he's replacing. Noah Pauley, of course, with Matt Campbell at Iowa State for a while, did a really nice job, and then took the job with the Green Bay Packers. Kind of out of nowhere, literally the day after we talked to him as part of that assistance avail. Just another twist on this crazy offseason that it's been for Penn State. But Kashif Moore will be in place soon. And Bob, just give me some quick thoughts on him if you have them.
Yeah, you mentioned a Jim Mora guy, kind of a similar early 2026 to Noah Pauley in that it looked like he was going one way, and now he's going to be at Penn State. It was the opposite for Noah, who was, I just felt bad for you. You spent a lot of time talking to him, and I know you were excited. I was excited to see what he could do. And after that availability on, I think February 4th, the news broke. Thank God we didn't talk about the the wide receiver coach opening being pressing on the Monday Blue White Breakdown, because I think that news happened right after, not
It
long
was
after.
almost immediate.
Yeah, it always happens. But so Kashif, Jersey guy, also Jim Mora guy, and I read your story about when the news broke, and just interesting to note that he actually, I think it was this past year, developed a former Wisconsin wideout into. He had a really terrific season under the direction of Kashif. And I think if you're a Penn State fan, I would take that as very good news, because look, it sounds like a broken record. All eyes are going to be on the whiteout room, and, for a while. It's literally been, Max. It's literally been. I mean, as they had some solid wideouts in 2022, and we didn't get to see Parker Washington down the stretch because he got hurt, and he's now blossomed into a fantastic wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars, a money receiver, a dominant effort, I think, in that playoff loss. But, he wasn't really there. I mean, ever since Jahan Dotson kind of left at the end of 2021, I think Penn State fans and I think Penn State coaches have been starved for, a go-to receiver in the offense that you can kind of build the passing game around. I think it's interesting, Max, though, that if you look at what Iowa State did the last couple of years, they did it differently. But 2 years ago, they had a pair of 1,000-yard receivers, and maybe not a go-to guy. And the more the merrier when it comes to receivers like that. And then they were able to pivot after they lost those guys. And Rocco got a little beat up down the stretch. They became more of a running team, but they also had some very solid wideouts, and they also they had some great, I wouldn't say great, but they're very, very good tight ends that could be great at Penn State. Very, very eager to see how this passing game comes together, because there's so many moving parts between the new wideouts coach, the Iowa State transfers, but also, there's a couple of Penn State wideouts that are back. One promising young wideout. So how quickly all this comes together, I think it's going to be a very interesting next couple of months. Not only for Matt, but we're assuming it's Kashif, the new wideouts coach.
Yeah. Barring another just crazy turnaround, it's going to be Kashif Moore. Three things come to mind for me, Bob, just based on what you said in the situation. You hit on two of them that I just want to reiterate, because I think they're really important. Number one, he's a Jersey guy. He played at UConn, so he knows the East Coast, Northeast region, where Penn State's had a ton of success in recruiting and developing, when James Franklin was here. But that was kind of a concern when Matt Campbell took over and brought a lot of his staff from Iowa State. And, they even kind of talked about it a little bit, is you have to get to know this new region. And it is a little bit of a different challenge to be able to do that. And now they'll have Kashif Moore on the staff, who has that connection. And they also have Savon Huggins at running backs coach, who is very well respected in New Jersey and the East Coast. So they now have that kind of blend of the regional footprint with these guys, as well as, Ikaika Malloy, the D-line coach, is really influential on the West Coast. They've got some guys in the Midwest. They have these ties throughout the nation now, and I think it's a really interesting pickup for that reason. I think number two that I wanted to highlight again is the fact that Skylar Bell is the UConn star wideout you mentioned. He was a transfer who didn't do it at a bigger school and came back and had a great career at UConn. And that is something that Noah Pauley did very well. And really all of the Iowa State staff did well, is find transfer talent and develop it at a high level. When you talk about the 2,000-yard receivers they had, Jalen Knoll and Jaden Higgins. Almost slipped my mind. Jaden Higgins was a transfer from a low-level school that came up and became a second-round NFL draft pick. So that's what these guys do. That's what they look for. The third piece is, you mentioned how quickly this all has to come together. If you're Kashif Moore, this is kind of a difficult situation to come into, because this room has been completely built without you. These aren't your guys, and that doesn't mean he's going to not like them or anything, but he's got to learn how to coach these guys. And it is a little bit of a similar situation to the running backs coach, Savon Huggins. And I asked him about it. I said, because Huggins was hired the latest of anybody. And I asked him, I said, look, this room was built before you got here. What challenge does that present? And what he told me I really loved, he said, look, the first thing I did was I made sure I sat down with all of these kids and their families specifically to learn about them, get to know them. So I think you're going to have to see a very similar thing from Kashif Moore. He's going to have his work cut out for him. He's joining on basically right as spring ball gets started. But on the surface, before we get the chance to meet him, I think it's a really good hire, and I'm curious to see where it goes.
Hey, and anytime you can look, Wisconsin is a college football program that's in the Big Ten, but no one is really talking. The Wisconsin offense has some work to do. So, what he was able to do with that receiver, and what he, to get to Penn State to be the receivers coach, no matter how you did it, it's an opportunity. It's an offer you can't refuse. As comfortable as he was or was going to be with Mara, this is a better opportunity for him. We're talking about Noah Pauley. He spent a hot minute at Penn State, and that's it. But you look what he did at Iowa State, and look what he did, I think, with Christian Watson at a smaller program. And it's not hard to connect the dots. He got to the NFL just because of what he was able to do at schools, at two different kinds of schools, and maybe not schools that you really associate with, big name receivers. So I think that the stage is much bigger for the new wideouts coach, but the opportunity is there if he can, especially given what Penn State has not been able to do at wideout the last couple of years. I mean, if Kashif can have some success in the next couple of years with Penn State wideouts, I mean, his future is even going to be brighter, and they're probably going to have a hard time holding on to him. But that's the opportunity you want, right? If you're a coach, it's a big challenge, but if you can get the job done, I think the reward will be there, not only for Penn State, but also for this guy as far as his future.
Yeah, and that's exactly like what Matt Campbell has done. I think I mentioned it a few podcasts ago, but he has a great track record of getting his assistants promoted, whether that's within college football, within his own team, or to the NFL. I mean, you don't have to look further than Noah Pauley going to the NFL this offseason. Yeah. Nate Shielhaas used to be an offensive assistant for him and got head coach interviews in the NFL this year. So, yeah, I think you can put a lot of trust in Matt Campbell to hire a good name at this position, and we'll see where it goes. But, Bob, because we're talking about wide receivers here on the Blue White Breakdown, I figured it makes sense to continue on and talk about kind of the whole depth chart, project this thing out. Some of the guys who interest us. On last week's live pod, Johnny and I talked about the quarterback room specifically with Rocco Becht and all them. So let's talk about the wide receivers and also a few of the names that, Bob, I know really intrigue you on offense. They'll be in that room. For me, it starts with the two leading Iowa State transfers, Brett Eskildson and Chase Soule, who both went over 500 receiving yards last year. Kind of a two-headed, I wouldn't call it monster, a two-headed attack maybe. They were solid. They're veteran guys who are coming over with a lot of experience. I think that they kind of raised the floor of this offense, and they have a lot of familiarity with Taylor Mauser, which is a big deal.
Yeah, especially I right before we jumped on, I was looking specifically at Eskildson. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. This is going to be a tough off season for us, Max.
Yeah,
just getting to know the faces, the spellings, and also the pronunciations of the new guys. It's going to be challenging. I was looking at him, and obviously Soule, and I think that they obviously produced, and the fact that they already have a built-in rapport with the OC and the quarterback and the head coach, I fully expect them to hit the ground running. I think it's fair to say they should be the leaders of the wideout room just because of their past, what they did last year, the way that they were coached, and also all the things I just mentioned. But I will say, when I think about Kobe Howard, who last year in the second half of the season when Terry Smith took over, he was able to make some explosive plays in just about every game. It was usually one or two. He made some plays as a blocker, not the biggest guy. But what what I think about him in his offseason is it sure sounded, Max, like last year that the Franklin regime invested so much in those veteran transfer wideouts, Kyron Hudson, the Devontae Ross, and the third guy is already the kid from Syracuse.
Trevor Pena.
Yeah, Trevor Pena. They invested so much in those guys, and they had the running backs. I don't think they really put a premium on developing the young, talented wideouts at Penn State, and I can almost understand why. This was a boomer bust. I don't want to say all or nothing, but they were all in, and now they're all out because the all-in approach really did not work. But Max, I don't want to say they got ignored, but it felt like Terry. One of the things Terry was able to do is look, we got to win games, but we also got to look at some of these young guys, not only to see what they can do to help us win some more games in 2025, but we need to know what their upside is for the future. And I think, that's one of the lasting good things I can say about Terry Smith as the interim head coach is I think Matt Campbell and some other coaches should be thankful that Terry did what he did as far as kind of looking at a lot of players that were not the go-to seniors. Kobe Howard is one. And the fact now that I think he's going to get a fair shot, the fact that I think he'll be treated as a threat and he'll be looped in from the get-go and maybe not overlooked, I think that bodes well for him. And I'm just curious. He's obviously his skills are there. So I'm just really curious to see what the Iowa State coaching staff does with him, because I don't think we've seen anywhere near the best of Kobe Howard. And I think if you give him more opportunities, I think you're going to see a lot of big plays.
I think the thing that sticks with me most about Kobe is, and you mentioned it briefly, but the blocking. He's not the tallest guy. He's well built for sure. But we knew that he was kind of a dynamic, get him in space. He can make some stuff happen. He was a much better than expected run blocker. And I think that was a real key for Terry to get him on the field. He learned to block, and that allowed him to make those plays. But you're right. He just had a good rapport with Ethan Grunkemeyer. He seemed like he really understood how to sit in a soft spot in a zone.
Yeah.
I think that he can be a guy who can go out there and win a route for you.
Mm-hmm.
I really like Kobe Howard's skill set. I'm excited to see him this year. I think keeping him was a big, big deal. But he's going to slot behind, as you mentioned, behind those two from Iowa State because of the familiarity, because of the experience. But it's not just those things. Those guys are talented. Brett Eskildson is so everything that I have is from Noah Pauley, of course, but he still has familiarity with those guys. And I think it's worth mentioning what I learned from him is that Eskildson, they asked him to play special teams as a freshman right away. And he came in, and then as a sophomore, he kind of broke onto the scene. And the thing that Pauley said sticks out about Eskildson to him is the work ethic. He said he trains like a pro, which, I mean, you can say that about a lot of guys. That's coach speak sometimes, but when it's the first thing he brings up about a guy who led your team in receiving last year, I think it's a good sign. And for Chase Soule, he's the one, and I've said this a few times. He's kind of the X factor / I don't know that dark horse is the right word, but he's the guy, in my opinion, that is probably going to break out on this offense next year. Some people might kind of be expecting it, but I still think the production could end up surprising people. He was banged up last year. He was banged up in spring. He was banged up in fall. He played during the season pretty much all year, but specifically what Noah Pauley said is he missed a lot of key development time while he's trying to learn a new offense coming over in fall camp. So he gets another year with this offense. He gets another year with Rocco Becht. I think if he's healthy, I think Chase Soule's really going to be a dynamic player. And when you look at those top three, it's a good group. And then you pair it with Benjamin Brahmer, Andrew Rapplier, and Gabe Burkle at tight end. And I don't know that this offense scores 40 points a game, but it's a real veteran, experienced group. And I think the passing offense specifically, especially with Rocco Becht behind it, who's going to go out there and sling it, you're looking at a pretty good floor, I feel like.
Yeah, it feels like it does feel like it's going to be a balanced offense, which everyone says they want that. I think in terms of skilled players, they have some depth, even at running back, even though they're missing
Yeah.
Katron and Nick. They bring in Carson Hansen, and just based upon what Quentin Martin was able to do, and the People's Kid from Ohio State. I think if they can stay healthy, they're going to feel good about that. A lot of it is going to be tied into how quickly the offensive line gels, but they certainly have some very talented young offensive tackles, and they have a great Swiss Army piece in Anthony Donko in case they need to move him. It sounds like they would like to have him at guard in an ideal world. Cooper Cousins as well. Talking to Ryan Clanton about the kid from, I think, Texas State, the center, Brock Riker. What a great name. I love that name. I think they feel pretty good about the interior of that offensive line. And I think that if the tackles take a step, and Clanton is a very, very confident guy. He didn't think there would be any issues with that because of the talent in the room, albeit young talent. This looks like an offense with the schedule they're going to play, that they're going to get better as the season goes, as they get comfortable. But it doesn't feel to me like there is any weak links with this offense, in terms of either skilled players, the quarterback, or even the offensive line. But I think the offensive tackles are the players to watch. But I think the receiver group, when you factor in the tight ends and what Iowa State has brought here, this should be fun to watch. And I think the key is that the OC, the head coach, and the quarterback all know exactly what they have at wideout and running back, and even at tight end. So I do think the upside of this offense is better than maybe a lot of people realize.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And you spent a lot of time with Taylor Mauser. I spent some more time with the assistants, but I do know, like, they're going to throw the ball, and they're going to throw it downfield. Like, it might be a run-first offense, but it's not going to be what we saw last season for most of the year with Penn State, where it's run first and then it's 5 yards or fewer passes that are going horizontally. This team is going to take some chances. Rocco Beck's going to throw some interceptions. It's going to be okay, though. I think fans are going to be all right to see that, considering what they've seen the past couple of years. But just to round out the wide receiver room, those top three are really kind of the guys. And, assuming health for all of them, it's not going to deviate much from that. But there are others that I wanted to mention that could see some time. If they develop it, behind the scenes, they could maybe make a splash. The one right away, though, that stands out for me is Keith Jones Jr., transfer from Grambling State, Bob. We talked about him a little bit when he committed. Guy, right? He is. They list him right now at 6'4", 208 pounds. I want to say he was 6'4", 185 last season at Grambling on the roster, at least. He's already put on a ton of weight. Interesting. I learned from Noah Pauley he was a basketball player in high school for 3 years. And only came back out for football during his senior year. And what Pauley said was he's just a blank canvas. I mean, he's got the size, the speed, he's got a lot of the traits they look for, but they have a chance to develop him. And that's a mold that not Penn State, but Iowa State had success with in the past, bringing up a guy from FCS or Group of 6 level and turning him into a great receiver. I think he's an interesting one. Maybe a similar boat physically is Lyric Samuel, who was a signee for Penn State last year. I saw him in practice a few times. I think he's got great ball skills. Is the blocking, is the physicality of the Big Ten something he can handle? Who knows? Peter Gonzalez is someone we've heard a lot of good things about, but hasn't stayed healthy. And then a couple of guys from Iowa State, Karen Brookins and Zay Robinson, who we have yet to really learn a whole lot about. But some young names, inexperienced names, but guys that I'll certainly have my eye on as we enter spring ball here.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, it's an interesting mix of young and old. When in doubt, I think the rule of thumb is you trust what you know. So I think the young guys that you mentioned are going to have to they're going to have some things to prove. But that's life. That's life at Penn State. But I think that Matt and his staff feel good about the mix at the skill positions, because you're coming to a new school with high expectations, but you brought a cast of players that you're extremely confident in. So as the season, I think we're going to know more about the young guys in August than maybe in the spring, just because there's so much that they have to do in so short of a time. The one bonus might be, Max, for the spring, the veteran guys. I don't know how much Matt kind of talked about it. I don't know how much they're going to work those guys in terms of physicality, just because they're going to count on them and they're going to have bigger roles in the summer. So that maybe it actually might be better for the young guys to flash early, and that way that might pave the way for some opportunities for them in August. But I do think that Matt is going to be smart enough to, and his coaches are, the veteran guys they can trust. They don't really have that much more to prove. So it could be a very interesting offseason for the younger players that you've mentioned at the skill positions, not only in August, but also in April and on April 25th.
And continuing that topic of opportunities for the young guys this spring is they are not going to have Rocco Becht for most of the spring. He's still working back from that surgery. You're going to have to work with some other quarterbacks, a chance for guys to get some more reps. It's going to be interesting. Bob, we're in the 27th minute here of the blue-white breakdown live on Thursday afternoon. I think we're pretty close to ready to wrap it up, barring some questions in the chat. But I know a topic you wanted to hit on real quickly, and something that we kind of teased on Monday when we talked is a name or two that intrigues you on the offense that we haven't talked about in the wide receiver group. Lay it on me.
Yeah, so I was specifically, because I knew we would be talking about excuse me, the wideouts coach, and I wanted to pivot to Ryan Clanton went into great detail about the room, and kind of he was asked about the known and the unknown, whether it was Anthony Donko or Cooper Cousins, or like his philosophy and positions. And I just think the three guys that I wanted to highlight for you are one of them was Brock Reichert, the center from Texas State. He said, look, this guy did not play at a big school, but if you watch the tape, there were some common opponents and common defenses he played against. He said that Iowa State played against. He said he is an impressive guy on tape, and he says he is a guy that Clanton stressed that he's a developmental coach. He said with a couple of modifications, he thinks he can be a really good center in a short period of time. And center is one of those positions that you don't realize what you have until he moves on. Penn State's had some really good players at center and at guard over the years. I think it's a key position because of how closely that he has to work with the quarterback. And I think Brock Reichert, I know that Dom Ruley is a guy that did well in the Pinstripe Bowl, but I think they have very, very, high hopes for Brock Reichert. And I'm not talking about in the future. I'm talking about, right out of the gate. I think he's absolutely a guy to watch. And the other thing he was asked about, Penn State's replacing Shelton and Rucci. And I do think it sounds to me like how he talked that if they have their druthers, Donko can help at a lot of places, but I think they want him. They want to keep him at guard. I think he's an all Big Ten caliber player. I'm surprised he hasn't gotten a little bit more notice. Because he played in the bowl game as a freshman in the loss to Ole Miss. He ended up, I think, starting at right tackle in 2024 before he got hurt. Because they had Rucci and they had Shelton, he kicked inside the guard. I thought he handled that well. Then he moved back out to tackle when necessary, when I think Rucci had some struggles. I just think he's a very valuable player. But the guys that I really I want to highlight because of what Clanton said about him are, he mentioned the young tackles he mentioned. They're not going to surprise you. Goodman and Aliciani, I think I have them right. Owen Aliciani, and I hope it's Malachi, not Malaki. Malachi Goodman, who was thought to be even a 5-star by a lot of recruiting services, but a high 4-star. And I think the top player in that class. And Garrett Sexton. But what he had to say about Goodman, you can tell he already knows that this guy's going to be impressive, and I think that both those players have a chance, Owen and Malachi, to start. But I think the ceiling for Goodman it might be, other than Donko, who he thinks still has a high ceiling. I think the highest ceiling belongs to Goodman, and that probably shouldn't surprise anyone, given how coveted of a recruit he was coming out of New Jersey, and I think it was Paramus Catholic. But he just said his body type and his skill set, and very, very a great approach. He basically said there's really nothing this guy can't do, and the question is how quickly he fits in. But he has the highest of hopes for Goodman.
I agree. I don't really think it's a surprise to hear his name. He's huge. He came to campus looking like he was ready to start as an early enrollee, and he's a great athlete. I remember we didn't see any of him last year because of the depth on the offensive line. But I remember Phil Troutwine saying in fall camp, he hasn't had a missed assignment yet, and we were like 2 weeks in. Really impressive. I can't wait to see what he does. The only other thing I got to add, because I think you had a great breakdown of the offensive line there. I knew about Brock Riker, did a lot of research on him because he had a great year at Texas State. I don't know why it didn't click until today that his name is Brock Riker and he's from Brock, Texas.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, that can't be a coincidence. I don't know why they did that, but that can't be a coincidence.
No, I'm willing to bet it's among the first things that are asked of him whenever we get the chance to talk to Mr. Riker. That's, hell of a football player, hell of a name too. And I got to know the backstory there. Maybe we'll get to meet his parents and say, hey, what were you thinking there? Excellent breakdown of the offensive line though, Bob. I think it's, when we talk about the depth of the offense, I do think the offensive line is the group that you maybe have the most questions about, but even then, there's quite a bit of promise there. I think it's a high floor group for sure. A lot of diversity, a lot of versatility, and excited to see how it plays out when we roll into spring here. Anything you feel like we missed here, Bob, on the live edition of the Blue White Breakdown?
No. I would just say this though. I could see why the OC and the offensive line coach are. You could tell they're good friends. I think the fan base couldn't miss him. When they got some camera time at the hockey game, but they are both very confident individuals, and I'm making this. I think there's a great distinction to be made between confident and cocky. I think these guys know what they're doing, and I think they know that if you give them the more talented of a prospect you give them, I think the more excited they are, because I think they both have worked very hard to get to this point. They both started out, well down the food chain, and they've had success, whether it was Ryan at Northern Iowa, then Iowa State, or whether it was Mauser. His journey, if you just look at where he's been and all the stuff he's had to do to get to this point, these guys are very confident, and I don't mean cocky. And I do think you're going to see that with the way the OC calls the game, but also with I think that you're going to see the offensive line come together, even though there's some young players, maybe a little bit quicker than the expectation. Ryan Clanton sounds very, very eager and confident in what he can do this year. I mean, in the future, but also this year. He was not fazed at all about, hey, we got to find 2 tackles. He's like, he said that was the least of his worries. So I think that's a very good sign.
You better be confident in this profession, right? And look, Johnny McGonigal had the story with the 2 Texans wideouts who were previously at Iowa State, and the mantra from Taylor Mauser is pretty much all you need to know. LYNH, if you know, you know.
Yeah.
We've talked about it. Johnny's written about it, and
I just figured that out. If I could figure it out on the fly, I'm sure that I could sure the listeners and the watchers can figure it out. But that's a great credo. I think that's a great code to live by in every aspect of it.
I agree. I think the offense will be fun. It's been great talking to you here, Bob, Thursday afternoon. I know we'll be back with
Yep.
2 more shows next week,
Yep.
probably Monday and Thursday. Not sure exactly what the setup's going to be. Johnny's back from PTO, I believe. But folks, we will have shows for you. Absolutely. Enjoy your weekends. Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to the show.